I'd like to start off with a life-changing experience that explains for me why I've been singing the gospel of local economies for over 20 years. When I was 13, my family moved to a 40-acre farm in my dad's home territory of southwest Missouri. It was a shock at first, coming from suburban Denver, and at 13, the Ozarks to me were like another planet. I used to laugh at the local paper and teeny columns from rural communities in the county. Correspondents, mostly little old ladies, still write about who visited whom, who has a birthday, who's in the hospital, and who else we need to pray for. But it wasn't long before I loved all of that. I realized I had come home to a place where many generations of my family and others had worked, played, fought, and lived and died together. If I died, these people would know about it and care. We were connected. Now, I'm not suggesting that small towns are your salvation or that we need to give up our smartphones and go back to some mythical, happier time. I am suggesting, and what I'll talk about today, is that we are making our way back to each other and moving forward as a result. On quite a grand scale, we are developing a new pattern for our civilization through food, one meal and one farm at a time. And I'll talk about some very specific, concrete ways in which this natural human leaning toward connection is changing laws, influencing business decisions, and changing the way big institutions operate. But first, we need to look at a concept I call washed out. And then we'll look at the new pathways we're building. What do I mean by washed out? I'm talking about how absurd it is that we design people out of our systems. I'm talking about how absurd it is that millions of people in this country do not have easy access, decent access to healthy food. I'm talking about the crazy fact that it's easier for a farm to send potatoes halfway around the country and back in a potato chip bag than it is to send them freshly dug to the school down the road. This is washed out. Because our food system has become like a superhighway, it now bypasses whole communities and leaves other avenues, simple commercial connections between a farm and a school, full of potholes or completely impassable. But something's happening in food. As the absurdities grow clearer and the outcry grows louder, people are saying, we'll find a way. And when people start finding other ways, things start changing. We see it in our economy all the time. Here's an example from the music industry, which evolved from music on front porches to many record labels to 5 dominating companies, and now a decentralizing, globally interconnecting universe of music. And I want to thank my colleague Rich Pirog for these slides, inspired by the business book, The Starfish and the Spider. Now, the music industry shift happened as artists and audiences found ways to reconnect. The music sharing service Napster 10 years ago kicked off a whole generation of new pathways that are changing the industry structure forever. The same thing is happening in food. The same progression is underway as the desire for connection with each other, with our food, with nature, with local economy, is forming new pathways that are making new choices and a more sensible and satisfying system possible. Now let's look at these new pathways. In particular, how they grow to form networks and how the networks connect to form a new infrastructure, literally new roads to new markets. We can go to Kalamazoo, Michigan to see this decentralizing, globally interconnecting process at work. In Kalamazoo, we see all the interest and activity that has come to characterize the local food movement. Farmers markets, chefs buying locally, school and community gardens, and organizations like Fair Food Matters in Kalamazoo that are channeling the community's investment in projects like the Can Do Kitchen for startup food entrepreneurs. This is where it all starts, with families and neighbors coming together to address absurdities like children thinking grocery stores produce milk. And then it grows into commerce, to farmers markets, where people go to find the products and services they can't get on the food system's superhighway. And in Kalamazoo, we see the next layer of connections happening, with larger volume markets growing as companies change the way they do business. And this growing part of the emerging system is up to nearly $4 billion annually. let me illustrate with 3 entrepreneurs and their interconnecting networks. One is Mark Elzinga. He's a 3rd-generation Kalamazoo County farmer who raises spring bedding plants for big box stores. When he learned of more people in his region, Kalamazoo, wanting to eat local, he said he connected and knew he had a way to get fresh food to his neighbors in the winter. He now raises wholesale volumes of organic lettuce and spinach using renewable energy during Michigan's cold months. Next, we have Michael Rowe. He's the food service director for Bronson Methodist Hospital. And Michael and his team have been working for 3 years to source more local food as part of Bronson's commitment to being a positive part of Kalamazoo's future. Local is up to 20% of Bronson's $3 million food budget. And in addition to being one of Mark Elzinga's first customers, Bronson's larger purchases are helping many smaller farms and can-do kitchen clients grow their businesses. And next we have Jinesh in the middle here. He's the West Michigan produce manager for the $37 billion food service company Sysco. West Michigan is one of 2 test markets for Sysco's new local foods focus. And it is Sysco's distribution system that is getting Mark Elzinga's greens to wholesale customers. And Dennis is doing it by getting off of the superhighway to find and work with more local growers and products. But that's not all. Mark Elzinga is inspiring greenhouse growers nationwide with his innovations. Michael Rowe is advising hospitals across Michigan, half of which last year signed up to source 20% of their food from Michigan-grown sources by 2020. And hospitals around the country are taking similar steps. Jinesh is part of a nationwide Sysco training effort to help other managers get off the highway, superhighway, and meet and work with growers like Pedro Bautista and his farm neighbors that have formed a cooperative and a brand to market their blueberries to people who more and more want their dollars to support people and places they care about. Kalamazoo is just one of dozens of communities in Michigan that are doing this. Traverse City and Detroit, in fact, are communities where whole business councils have formed to work with connecting local entrepreneurs and regional food opportunities. The state of Michigan is involved with these communities, talking about building food hubs to connect all the pathways and networks that are forming. And this is just Michigan. I could go on with examples from around the country. Why not? 83 out of 99 counties in Iowa are organized and meeting on a regular statewide basis about food pathways. In California, groups up and down that state are talking about connecting local food supply up and down that big state. In the Northeast, we have a lot of activity with farm lenders and social investors looking at new pathways to financing for smaller farms and local food. You know, it goes from St. Louis to Joplin, Missouri, Flagstaff, Arizona. My charge to you is to recognize and invest in these pathways and networks, because it is this new community and commercial infrastructure that will carry all the successful ventures to come. So we've seen how people all across the country are coming around to connect on food, to address absurdities that have become too ridiculous and too obvious to ignore. We're building new food pathways between the farmers with quality products and the people who need and want them, where the washouts between them have become so wide that this current generation of children may be the first not to outlive their parents because of dietary diseases. We are making our way back to each other and making progress as a nation. Those little old lady correspondents in Webster County, Missouri, and their friends and neighbors in the city, and all their friends and family are saying, we're connected and we care. This is no elite or isolated movement. This is the heart of America talking. This is the heartland from coast to coast, saying, we believe these truths to be self-evident, that in order to maintain our God-given right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, all people must have access to healthy food and the means of producing it in a way that strengthens community, builds local economy, and works in harmony with nature and neighbors. Thank you.